Nicknames are really accidental. They emerge organically, and once they stick, they tend to tell the truth, sometimes more truth than you and I are comfortable hearing. They compress a whole personality into a phrase. Take Alexander the Great. No birth certificate recorded that title for him. It was history's verdict on a man whose ambition and military genius were so outsized that Alexander of Macedon just wouldn't cut it, so they called him Alexander the Great. Or take Richard the Lionheart. The nickname doesn't describe his tenderness or domestic skills. It describes his ferocity, courage, and his battlefield reputation. The lion image recaptured something essential about how the world experienced Richard. They called him Richard the Lionheart. Take Margaret Thatcher, labeled the Iron Lady. The name began as an insult, but it stuck because it revealed her resolve, her rigidity, and her refusal to yield. And she famously embraced it. The nickname interpreted her life, because that's what nicknames do. The reality is the world experiences us. It experiences you and me, and in that experience, it often creates for us a nickname that describes us. Nelson Mandela was called Tata. This means father in Xhosa. It reflects his role as a unifying paternal figure in post-apartheid South Africa. Afrikaners call Paul Kruger, President Paul Kruger, Paul, Uncle Paul, because there's a familial nature with him, there's a reliance on him, there's a closeness historically. Now Jesus, in the middle of forming the 12 apostles, gives two men a nickname. And it's fascinating because it's referenced out of nowhere and slightly humoristically in the context of naming the 12 disciples. He calls James and John the sons of thunder. I love it. The nickname is vivid and strong, powerful, sons of thunder. This is the only place in the Bible where their nickname is listed. Now, here's an interesting thing you might not know, that many scholars think that there's some kind of rivalry, or there was, between Peter and John. And we know that Peter was the author of the Gospel of Mark, from where our text comes, and that Mark wrote down his words. Well, that's what we believe. Now, some scholars have said that Peter wrote this or gave those words because he wanted to deflate John a bit. He wanted us to hear the nickname that Jesus gave for John. But I want to say to you that doesn't really hold any water. We doubt that Peter used the scriptures to settle scores, and when you read the Gospels, it shows otherwise. What Peter recorded for us through Mark was an apparent, affectionate, yet honest nickname that Jesus gave for James and John. So let's go back to our text and get some context. Mark chapter 3 is not a calm chapter. By this point in Jesus' ministry, conflict has arrived early and hard. Religious leaders are watching Jesus closely. They accuse him of breaking Sabbath laws. They question his authority. And in verse 6, they actually begin plotting his destruction. And crowds, meanwhile, are pressing in, so much so that Jesus needs a boat to keep from being crushed. It's in this moment of rising opposition and swelling popularity that Jesus withdraws to a mountain and does something deliberate. He appoints 12 disciples so that they could be with him and so that he could send them out to preach. You must always distinguish the calling of the disciples and the eventual appointment of them in the position of disciple. In any event, Mark gives us the list of disciples, and on this list is James and John, but with a parenthetical aside, almost humorous in its placement, because we read, and James the son of Zebedee and John the brother of James, to them he gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder. Quickly, who was James? James was the son of Zebedee, and he was a fisherman by trade, and he belonged to the inner circle, Jesus' inner circle, We always read of Peter, James, and John as the inner circle of Jesus Christ. He sees James, the dead raised. He sees Christ transfigured. He sees Christ sweating blood in Gethsemane. And James will become the first apostolic martyr. Acts chapter 12 records his execution, and it's almost recorded with chilling brevity. No speeches, no farewell discourse. James is put to death by sword and in silence. And so poetically we may say, James's thunder ends in faithfulness unto death. Quickly, who is John? John is often sentimentalized. It drives me insane. We picture the elderly apostle writing about love and leaning gently on Jesus' chest. And that's all true, but it's not the whole truth, because he is a son of thunder. The early John is definitely very intense and combustible, and I would suggest combustible towards the end as well, but in a different manner, and I'll get to that. When a Samaritan village refuses Jesus, John doesn't suggest prayer or dialogue. He suggests annihilation. He says, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them? That's Luke chapter 9, verse 54. Now that's thunder, isn't it? This is also the man who once tried to stop someone casting out demons simply because, according to him, he was not following us. That's the quote. John was someone who liked clear boundaries, sharp lines, and clear camps. Most interestingly, layered all over this, James and John are combustibly ambitious. They want prominence, they want recognition, they want assurance that all this will pay off. At one point, the mother even asked Jesus to guarantee them seats of honor in glory. And that request is breathtakingly bold and painfully human. And of course, the other disciples are outraged. By the way, this group, the disciples, are definitely not a group of spiritual giants, unless you haven't noticed otherwise. This is a group of ordinary men with extraordinary egos. James and John want to wield power prematurely. They have essentially zeal without wisdom, conviction without compassion, courage without restraint. And Jesus does not say of them, you are sons of love. He does not say you are sons of peace. He says of them, you are sons of thunder. But, here's the big but, you must see this, that Jesus does not reject them. Despite all of this, he keeps them. Jesus does not wait for James and John to mellow before calling them. He names them as they are. And Jesus, this is so important, he's not embarrassed by their rough edges. He doesn't pretend they're something they're not. And that is really liberating when you take that in. You don't have to sanitize your personality before coming to Christ. In fact, you shouldn't sanitize it. I'll get to that. You don't have to become quieter, nicer, or more palatable. You come as you are, and he transforms your personality into the right direction as he wills. You must notice that the 12 disciples are astonishingly different. Peter speaks before thinking. Thomas thinks before believing. Matthew calculates. James and John explode, and Jesus calls all of them. Uniformity would suggest technique. But the diversity of the disciples proves the sovereignty of God. Here's another important thing. James and John do not need less passion, and nowhere do we read of Christ limiting their passion. They needed a better object for that passion. That's the point. So Jesus does not extinguish their thunder. He redirects it. John becomes the theologian of love precisely because of his heart that burns hot. James becomes a martyr because courage, once purified, does not retreat. Tim Keller often says that the gospel does not eliminate desire, it recalibrates desire. And he's echoing Augustine's Ordo Amoris, the order of loves. The Christian life is not about eliminating desire, but rather about loving the right things in the right order. Grace does not make us dull and uniform and cookie-cutter creations. It, in fact, if understood properly and applied properly, makes us dangerous in the right way. The point is that Jesus does not recruit any one personality type. He recruits thunder, he recruits doubt, he recruits ambition, he recruits weakness. James and John bring thunder and Jesus brings grace, and that grace is enough. The grace of God is enough for every personality, and the grace of God encompasses every personality, and the grace of God perfects that which it has started. I close with this thought. Be careful to think that Jesus wants you to abandon your personality type in the church and become some kind of sanitized human being who just does everything according to some kind of unexpressed book. God designed His church to be made up of men and women from every tribe and from every personality. Maybe you're not a son of thunder, maybe you are a son of soft rain, or a daughter of the dramatic, or a child of confusion. I have no idea what nickname Jesus may have given you, but I do want to say to you today, you are welcome in His church, regardless of who you are in personality, strange or complex or difficult as you may be, but He has made you to be who you are. Therefore, grow in Him so that the personality that He has given you directs itself to unique passions and desires in a way that most glorifies Him. Direct your desires within your personality in a way that most glorifies Him. Grow, but please do not become dull and sanctified. Accept your quirks. Live your quirks. Live in peace. Enjoy God. Enjoy what He has created. May God bless you so. Amen.